What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So, a couple of days ago, the CPI score came out, so inflation for January. So, I want to talk about food prices. Are food prices going up? Are they going down? That's what we're going to focus on in this video. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification, and then click all. By clicking all, you'll get notified anytime we post a video. We do daily videos here, so by clicking the bell notification and clicking all, you should be getting updated every day. And just a reminder, thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter and Threads, you can at the TEC Show Live. And one more reminder, tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll be doing a live stream. So come join us. It's going to be headline news of the week is what I'm titling this. And so we'll just be talking about some of the events that we've seen in the last few days. Okay, so let's go ahead. I want to get right over to the Consumer Price Index. Now, before I get started, I want to talk about why is this important? Why should we be focused on this? Especially if you're retired like me, you're living on a fixed income. It's there's certain things that you really start to focus on because there's certain things that you absolutely need. Food is something you need. And so when you have a fixed income and you can no longer work overtime and make a little extra money here and there, you start to really look at the price of food. At least that's the way I am now. I wasn't like that before, but now I'm really focused on how much food costs. And I have a little more control now. Being retired, I can make food at home a lot more than when I was working. When I was working, I was always on the go, so a lot of times I would eat out or I would just on the way home get some fast food. I know it's not healthy, but I just didn't have the time to do things. And even when I got home, a lot of times I was so tired I didn't feel like cooking anything. But now that I'm retired, I have that opportunity to cook. And so I can really plan my meals. I can go to the grocery store and get things that are on sale or things that are cheaper. And so that's why I think it's important for us to focus on some of the categories of food and what categories are more expensive now than they were last month or less expensive now than they were last month. Okay, so first off, let's look at overall. So overall inflation for January, we're looking at 3.1% year over year, okay? Month to month, so from December to January, we're looking at 0.3% increase. And so the bottom line is if you're looking at these numbers, just so it makes sense, last year, things were 3.1% less than they are right now, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. And then last month, from December to January, things have gone up 0.3%, okay? Now, let's take a look at the overall history. We'll go over this real quick. I like looking at some of these graphs here. But when you're looking at the history, and they started back in January of 2023, you see it was at 0.5%. This is month to month. So from December of 2022 to January of 2023, we saw 0.5%, and then it went down in February to 0.4%. Then it went way down in March to 0.1%. Then it bumped back up in April to 0.4%, went down in May to 0.1%. And this is month to month. So basically, these are all increases. So when you're looking at it, even though it's going down, and hopefully this makes sense, even though it's going down, it's still a little bit more expensive than it was the month prior. Okay, so a good example here, February, it was 0.4%. That was the increase from month to month. But in March, it was a 0.1% increase. So it decreased, but it was still an increase, if that makes sense. I know it gets a little confusing, but we're just kind of looking at the patterns here. I think that's what we should be really focusing on, just seeing what inflation is doing. And so you see it's going down here, it's gone down here. Now look, this is very important for us to be looking at. October, November, December, January. We saw an increase from 0.1% to 0.2%. We saw it stayed the same at 0.2% in December, and then we saw an uptick to 0.3% in January. What will it do in February? Obviously, we want it to start coming back down. We want negative numbers, negative 0.3%, negative 0.1%. That's what we really want, because that will show us that things are less expensive this month than they were the month prior, okay? So some more graphs here. This graph here just basically is showing us what they consider core inflation and then overall inflation. So economists like to use this line here. This is core inflation. It's not as it's not as volatile. So that's why they like to use that. And then this is all basically all when it comes to all items inflation. And so this is what I just quoted you guys. So I quoted you guys 3.1% year over year. When it comes to core inflation was 3.9% year over year. Okay. So I'm just kind of giving you guys an idea of what economists look at. And so why is it important that we're focusing on what economists are looking at? It's important because we know that the Federal Reserve wants to start cutting interest rates. And we might not see that in March. We probably won't see it in March, but we could and probably will see it later this year. Now, if they're cutting interest rates, what does that mean for us? That means that borrowing is much more desirable. That means that I might want to go out and buy a car. I might want to go out and buy a house because the interest rates are starting to drop. Right now, the interest rates are so high, it's discouraging people from wanting to go and buy a car and buy a house. There's still people that are out there doing that, but some people are looking at this and saying, we want to wait for these interest rates to drop, and then we'll go out and we'll spend. The same thing with businesses. Businesses are looking at this as well. They're taking out loans. They might not want to take out a loan now because interest rates are high. So they're waiting for interest rates to go down, and then they'll get in the market. Okay, so that's why it's important for us to focus on what economists are looking at, because we want to know how is the Federal Reserve looking at this situation? Are they seeing it the same way that we are? And if we're focused on the all items when it comes to inflation, and they're focused on core inflation, when they're basically core inflation, they're taking out food and energy. That's how they do core inflation. So if they're focused mainly on that, we need to know what that is as well, so we can kind of see where they're going when it comes to cutting interest rates. So what I want to show you guys, and this is looking at when it comes to food, I want to focus on some of the different categories that they look at when they get the CPI scores, because basically when they're pulling in this consumer price index, it's just, think of it like a shopping cart. So you have a shopping cart, you're pushing that shopping cart through the grocery store, and you're putting different items in that shopping cart. And they're taking the cost of those items and they're looking at year over year, and then they're also looking at month to month. Are those prices going up? Are they coming down? So that's how they calculate this. But it's not just food. They're looking at all different types of categories, okay? Shelter, everything, energy, all of that. Okay, so I want to show you guys this when it comes to food, because like I said, there's one thing that we all need. We all need food. We can't live without food. So some other things, like if you're looking at buying a new car, buying a house, of course we need shelter, but you can rent, even though rent is going up as well. But overall, we have to have food or we will not survive. Okay, so what we're going to focus on this right here. So this is unadjusted year over year. And then we're going to focus on the month to month seasonally adjusted. Okay, those are the numbers that we'll be looking at. So all items, 3.1%. We went over that already. When it comes to the increase from December to January, it was 0.3%. Now looking at food here, the increase year over year is 2.6%. So what does that mean? That means that it's a 2.6% increase when you compare the cost of food this year compared to last year. Okay, so there is an increase. Now, when it comes to inflation, in most situations, you're going to see an increase. Over time, like, so a year from now, we're going to still see an increase, but we want that increase to be lower than 2.6%. And obviously, people who were receiving Social Security, they received a COLA increase of 3.2%. Of course, they want it below 3.2% because that would mean that you have more purchasing power. And so you don't want to lose that. So looking at food across the board, it was 2.6%. And then when we're looking at the increase from December to January, it was 0.4%. Food at home, this is the important category. This is when you go to the grocery store, this is what they're talking about. So food at home, the increase year over year is 1.2%. And when we're looking at from December to January, the increase was 0.4%. Looking at cereal and bakery products, When we're looking at the year over year, 1.5%. And then when we're looking, look at this here. When we're looking from December to January, it's actually cheaper. So cereal and bakery products are cheaper now than they were, when I say now, I mean January, because you have to remember we're not in February yet. Even though we're in February, we don't have the numbers for February. We won't get that until March. So from December to January, the price of bakery products and cereals are a little bit less. So it's minus 0.2%. Looking at meats, poultry, fish, eggs, when we're looking at year over year, it's minus 0.9%. So that means that last year, things were a little bit more expensive in that category than they are right now. And then when we're looking at from December to January, there's been no change. Dairy and related products, minus 1.1% year over year, which means things are cheaper now. Those items are cheaper now than they were last year. And then when we're looking at December to January, there's a slight increase of 0.2%. Fruits and vegetables, it's year over year is 1.1%. And then when we're looking at from December to January, it's 0.4%. Non-alcoholic beverages and materials, we're looking at 3.4% year over year, and then 1.2% from December to January. All right, other food at home, 2.6% year over year, and then 0.6% from December to January. Food away from home, this is important. This is what we need to focus on, because I just talked about this in a live stream, I think live stream last week. Just the cost of going to restaurants and the cost of even going to fast food restaurants is crazy now. Really expensive. And I gave the example of going to El Pollo Loco and getting a burrito and 2 tacos, just a burrito and 2 tacos, no drink, no chips, nothing, no combo meal or anything like that. And it came to $17. $17. I remember when you could go to a restaurant, and I'm sure you could still go to a restaurant and get food for, get a whole plate of food for $17. Now, fast food restaurants that's what they're charging. It's really crazy. So let's look at this. So year over year, 5.1% increase. Okay, so that means that items now are 5.1% more than they were last year. And then when we're looking at from December to January, it's 0.5%. And so out of all the items that we've looked at, food away from home, inflation is really still there when it comes to food away from home. We're seeing inflation in some of the other categories, but food away from home is by far a lot higher than some of the other categories. And so what does this all mean? This means that there's certain things, and this is kind of the way that I do my shopping. I'm going to look at this and I'm going to use this to determine what I'm buying for the month. And if things are down, if things are less, then I might want to go out and spend some money on those items. As long as it's, as long as I can keep them around for a while, I don't mind spending money on them. But that is the kind of the way that I'm going to be shopping. Things are more expensive right now. I might want to wait. I might want to wait until next month and maybe get some of those items next month. So that's why I think it's important for us to be focusing on what is food doing when it comes to inflation. Now, we also need to take into consideration that grocery stores are just keeping their prices high. And we're seeing that. And so we've heard talk, at least the CEO of Walmart has indicated that they plan to drop prices in groceries this year. And Kroger is trying to, they're working on a deal with Albertsons, and they're also saying that they're going to drop their prices. The fear is that if they merge with Albertsons, then prices will go up because now they have a larger corner of the market, and so they can raise their prices, and people really can't compete with them because they're all over the place. And so even if they raise their prices, the average person is just going to pay for they're going to pay for those increased prices because they don't have very many options maybe in certain areas. And so it'll be very interesting to see if prices are going to come down. Now, because the CEO of Walmart said that they plan to lower prices. I think that's good. I think that's a good sign, because what that means is they're the largest grocery chain in the world. So if they're dropping their prices, these other grocery chains are going to have to compete with them. And so they'll probably drop their prices as well. And so that's all it really takes. And it also takes for the American people to stop buying. Obviously we have to buy food, but if we stop buying in certain categories, maybe those categories will start to go down in price. And once they get down, hopefully it gets down to a level that everyone's comfortable with, and then people start buying again. But it's, it does go up and down. Okay, it's supply and demand. We know about that. So that's pretty much how it works. But I do think it's important for us to focus on some of these different areas when it comes to inflation. Shelter and things like that are also important. I'll probably do a video in the future and just talk about shelter. But some of these areas should be very important to people, especially if you're retired. And so that's the main reason I like going over this stuff with you guys. If you guys have any questions, let me know down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.
This Congress can't pass gas, and he needs to run against a do-nothing Congress. And I think that can give them some traction that he did not have before. But, maybe they could get Rudy Giuliani to be Speaker. We know he can pass gas for sure. But this is almost comical.